we really don't have a problem. Up till recently, I've maintained livestock protection animals. I've had both dogs and llamas, and we had better luck with the llamas than we did dogs. I've had dogs previously, but in a small acreage situation, the problem with livestock protection dogs is they tend to own more land than you do, and they want to patrol hundreds of acres, and keeping a very athletic dog in a fence you've designed for sheep can sometimes be difficult. If you decide that you're going to have a livestock protection animal, whether it's a donkey, a llama, or a dog, you need to consider your neighbors, because the llamas tend to be most passive. They're not going to be aggressive towards other people, and really, if they spit on someone, they're probably not going to injure them. Donkeys can be that next step up because they can kick and they can bite. And then your next level of liability is going to be that livestock protection dog. We're on a small acreage, and obviously that reduces how much time we can spend with our animals out in the open. So we really try to magnify the effect that we have through nutrition, and that's probably the biggest aspect. Drought years, Colorado and this entire area is so prone to drought, so we have hay markets that fluctuate pretty dramatically. So with that, securing feed is a huge aspect of what we do. We're constantly changing how we feed and water our animals. They've presented us with challenges. Animals walking in feed does nothing but destroy feed. So we've tried several different types of troughs, and I can't say that we found one that we love. Primarily we're using a commercial trough. They're pretty slick bottoms, so the animals don't like to walk into it. They'll sometimes put one foot in them, but there's no bar across them. They're really easy to flip over if you need to get the old grain out of them. It just makes it easy to keep them clean. Well, here on the Front Range, we actually have a very mild winter. We have a few days of intense snow and sometimes blizzard-like conditions. But our biggest concerns in the winter is wind. And our feeding program does not change from summer to winter because our animals are not getting anything from the pasture. So we don't really change our feeding program, but managing your hay so that the animals are able to eat it before it blows away is actually sometimes a challenge. Using feeders can be helpful.
Kian is a Wensleydale ram. He makes beautiful babies. But the thing, whenever you work with rams, you never touch them on top of the head, because to them that's a dominance. And because he is one of the dominant animals in the property, he continually hits, and it has developed kind of a mutation on top of his head where he continually hits. And this will be all bloody. Particularly as we go into the short days, he becomes more aggressive with the others. Whenever one handles the rams, I have a rule with all my interns right now that no one can go into the ram pen alone, just because as the days become shorter, they become more aggressive. I wouldn't advise anyone probably to handle this ram other than myself. I've raised him, but even I don't go into the pens by myself during the breeding season. They just are really rough. Their minds are on hormones, and that's about all that they're thinking about. Whenever we're housing rams, usually the normal fencing that we would use for ewes is not sufficient because they're always fighting, establishing dominance, and I try to put in a stronger fence, maybe even stronger than a canal panel, use livestock panels to hold them in, or a permanent fence. Particularly during breeding, you have to have the animals separated, because if you have two rams side by side, one ram will be in with the other ram, and they will fight, and they could kill each other. So you need housing to keep the rams away from each other, particularly during breeding season. Rams are not for the unexperienced. I have had several people come to me and say, my ram turned mean. Well, if you pet them and try to make them a friend, they're going to turn mean. When you're working with the young ram lambs, particularly if they're bottle fed, I try not to keep a bottle fed baby as a ram, because they lose the fear of the person. And even as a young animal, as they start coming and they start butting me, that's very cute if they only weigh 20 to 30 pounds, but once they get bigger, it's very dangerous. And so anytime they start hitting me as a lamb, I will slap their face. The only way I touch them is underneath their chin, not on top. And they learn from very young that I'm to be respected. And that is something that I have developed and what works for me. But again, rams are not for the beginner. How I handle sick animals, the best thing, the best practice that one can do with sick animals is to have a sick pen or quarantine pen. You try to isolate them from the others.
If it's a contagious disease, they go to a closed quarantine pen, which is a 12 by 12 stall. On an operation this size, I have to do quite a bit of my own vet work and a lot of planning for that. And so the vet work that we do are standard vaccinations, which we do Clostridium perfringens, CD and T, which is Clostridium perfringens plus tetanus. There's a lot of folks that vaccinate for a lot more things than I have in years past, but that CD and T is really the essential one to have in any ruminant.
If you're buying an animal and bringing it onto your property, there is a strong likelihood that it will carry novel pathogens, maybe not anything that's of danger, but something that would be unique to your current animal population. So you put them in what we call a sick pen or a quarantine pen.
Any animal comes in, it is quarantined for a minimum of 28 days. It lives in an area that is separate, and they are fed last every time. You feed the healthy animals and the ones that you know are good, and then you feed the new ones or the sick ones last. It's a really hard habit because you want to go take care of that sick one first. But if you take care of the sick one, you may be carrying whatever it has to all of your animals.
Any recommendation when you're first starting is do some research. And that research, not just the internet, and it's very easy to go to the internet and start looking, but I would go and talk to someone, find a mentor or someone who has the breed that you want to work with, and follow them through their process. Ask questions by doing your internet research. So what do you do during breeding? What do you do for feeding? What are some of the idiosyncrasies of the breed, the unique things that you might not think of? There's a lot of information when raising these that you can learn from someone who does it that you will never find in a book, can be critical to your operation.
To me, the most important thing when you're doing small scale or hobby livestock ranching is you got to make it convenient, you've got to make it fun, and you've got to make it easy.